quite fun.
Nice.
A little bit of climbing, which I like.
I'll just ring Catherine and see what's happened.
Now, Jack Desano, I left a message on. I put up with Tim, so you don't need to ring me now.
Okay, I will.
Right, good.
Yeah.
Tom, you might be interested in this. We're looking at finally hooking up my old batteries from our electric car to a solar panel. So yeah, just in the.
Hello, just wondering how you're going.
Just mute, Tim, mute your mic.
Yeah, 6 o'clock. They used to be, but with the COVID ones, we brought them forward to 6 o'clock because we don't have travel time. Sorry about that. You okay? Can't hear you, but I gather you'll log on shortly. Okay, bye. Catherine is operating on the 6:30 time.
And there's some chips, mate.
Yeah, sorry. Stop the video again.
No, I like it.
I tried to have dinner beforehand, but didn't quite get there.
It's all right. How many people we got there?
We don't have enough at the moment.
Do we have anyone in the old version of the Zoom call? Because we got sent 2 different ones, didn't we?
Yeah, sorry about that. I'll check my email.
It's 6.
Oh, we've got 6, so we're okay.
Yeah,
the moment,
yeah.
yeah.
I was just looking. Yeah, 6 is the quorum.
Yeah,
7 now.
7, it's all good.
Yeah.
I haven't received any apologies on the email.
Hi everybody, sorry about that. I was thinking it was 6:30, not 6.
That's okay. We'll finish up half an hour early then, won't we?
Darn it.
Yes.
No. Oh shit. Okay, right. Where are we at? What do I need to just get started, or are we still waiting for people, or what's going on?
I think we can get started.
Jim's having his dinner, so yeah.
Who is?
He's not. His camera's not turned on.
Who's that?
Tim's having his dinner, so.
Oh. All right.
So his camera's not turned on.
I can see. I can give a blow-by-blow because I can see him. He's just over there. So.
Got a kangaroo away.
Yeah.
I can't see who's accepted or declined because that'll be on Jack's computer. He sent out the invite.
Bear with me for 1 second.
I don't have a very big computer and I don't have multiple screens, so and as I'm getting older, my eyesight's getting worse. So it's interesting managing all the documents on the screen, but that's fine. We'll get there. Okay.
Now, Angus hasn't accepted. Tom's accepted. Darren Cox hasn't accepted. And Catherine hasn't accepted, but it's all good. We're all here. I think that's it. I think so. Nathan Shanks has accepted, but he's not here at the moment. So, Councillor Shanks. So I think
I'll send him
Okay.
a message.
Thanks, Cody.
Yep.
Welcome to Megan, who's doing the minutes again for us. Thank you very much, Megan.
So should we get started?
I think so.
Okay. Alrighty, Tony. Hello everybody. Nice to be here for yet another month of manic action behind the scenes and weirdnesses in catching up with each other via online and phones and whatnot. So first of all, I'd like to do the statement of acknowledgement. So we here at the Working Group would like to acknowledge that the land we meet on today is the traditional lands for the Kaurna people, and we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Greater Adelaide region, and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Kaurna people today. Attendance record and roll call. I think Jack and or Tim, we've just established that.
We have.
And you haven't received any apologies, is that what I heard? Or
That's correct. So none as yet.
okay, and any new motions to grant leave of absence? And leave of absence, I believe that Darren is still on a leave of absence, but as we're moving into the finalisation of the draft, I think I'll give him a call before the next meeting and just see if he's able to re-engage in the process. I think he'll have a lot to offer in that. So I'll that can be an action for me to follow that up. But I do understand that I think he's had a lot on his plate with both the bushfires and the COVID-19 and the function of the Salvation Army and those processes. So, yeah. Thank you, everybody. Non-attendance, is anybody just not rocked up?
Yeah, at the moment I've got Angus and Councillor
Angus.
Shank.
Oh, okay. All right.
Nathan messaged me saying he's going to be late, but he'll be here.
Okay. All right. Is Jack on board? Jack Gill?
Yes, Jack's
Oh,
there.
hi, Jack. Sorry. Have you had conversations with Angus around? I don't want to put the onus on you. I just thought you were friends with him outside of this process.
Yeah, I saw him a message last month. I don't think he's seen it, so he might just be like with uni exams. He might just be buried under.
Yeah.
In that sense, but
Yeah,
yeah, I'll give him another message.
It's that week too, isn't it? Really?
It is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, we're very glad to have you here, then, Jack. And anybody else who's doing. Cody, are you still studying?
Yeah.
You got exams?
Yeah.
Oh, we appreciate your time, especially. I know the pain. Okay, so thank you for that. Okay, so moving on to confirmation of minutes. Has everybody had a chance to look at the last set of minutes?
Yeah.
Has anybody got any issues?
No.
No, I just sort of spotted a couple of typos, but they're nothing of significance, so I didn't have any particular issues. Would somebody like to move that the minutes are accepted?
I can move them.
Thank you, Jack. Would somebody like to second?
Sure.
Was that you, Jack?
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. I don't have any kind of voting things. I don't know if we're bothering with that or if you're managing that at your end.
It comes up. If you click on participants, it shows who's here, and then you've got the ability to do a yes or a no. But
I've just made you co-host, Catherine, so you should come up now if you click on participants.
I think because I've shrunk my screen, I might be missing some tabs. Oh yeah, yeah. Participants disappears when I shrink my Zoom screen too much. So, okay. Would we like to vote that the minutes, that motion is accepted? Okay, that looks like everybody. Thank you. Okay, moving on to for business arising from minutes. Tim or Jack?
I could possibly run through these. Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
okay, great.
Okay, on the establishing a social page for the working group, we haven't progressed that, unfortunately. So that's a continuing action. On the Town of Gawler Business Development, we had a really great meeting yesterday with Karen from the Town of Gawler Business Development Group, and we agreed on several things. I'm getting a bit of feedback. Can everyone turn off their mics, please? Can't think. That's better. Okay. So we agreed to prepare a discussion paper which really outlines where we're at with the area of content of the draft plan, which deals with businesses as a subgroup of the community. We agreed that we would share the table of contents with Karen so that she could see the context of how it fits in, and we would have a discussion around what types of opportunity there is for the business community to come in and have a say. We discussed a number of potential opportunities like some workshops and work groups, and we also discussed the Gawler pathway strategy that Jack Gill put up, the opportunity to improve signage, connect that with businesses and with visitor information, and potentially put it on the Gawler app. And that was a really interesting discussion. It sort of progressed a little bit further into the idea of a Gawler fun trail using our bike pathways and walkways, where you could actually earn points and get some kind of reward. So look, I think there's a really good foundation that's been set for further discussion around this. I'll prepare a bit of a brief discussion paper. I could potentially, we envisaged that we've got a little bit more work to do to get the content of the plan to a stage where we'd like to discuss it further. So perhaps in a month, we'd spoke about a month's time going back to them and picking up the discussion. So we'll flesh that out, prepare a discussion paper. I could bring that to the next meeting, and then we could actually engage with the Gawler Business Development Group in a bit more detail and maybe get together with them face to face. Jack, have I missed anything?
I think probably just it just pays to probably mention that they are really interested in listening to some of the mitigation strategies and renewable energy strategies, and especially the business sector, and what gains they can make in those spaces, which we've been discussing for a while now. So I think by identifying those opportunities with Karen and knowing what the working group's sort of working towards, not just from an operations perspective, but a community issue, and the people that the development group represents, I think they were very excited about hearing more about that, which is really, really positive. And some of the larger scale projects we've been toying with and discussing, I think they're excited to hear more about that. So I think positive was the outcome, I would say, Tim, in that respect, and lots more work to be done with the group. But I think they are happy, and they would also welcome members of the working group sort of going along to a board meeting, a business development group board meeting, and just letting us have a bit of a talk to them and tell them what's going on and what we're involved with as well. So I think some really good outcomes as of yesterday's meeting. So.
I might just add a couple of more things that I skipped the first time around. We discussed things like climate preparedness, like with floods and fire, how that does impact on our business communities as well. We also discussed that Gawler is really quite unique in the number of heritage buildings it's got, And whilst everybody would like to be connected in with renewable energy and things like that, there are limitations on what can be done on heritage buildings. So I think there's interest in exploring how can we work around that a little bit more, both on site and off site. So that's opened up some opportunity down the track as well.
I think she actually, Karen was quite happy to nominate business owners in Gawler that would be very receptive to this, and business owners in Gawler that have a lot of heritage properties within their sort of group of buildings and businesses that they operate. So sort of already she's identifying opportunities that we can sort of try and develop further very quickly with this group as the plan is gaining momentum and progressing. So Tim, I think that was a very good outcome at the end of the meeting yesterday, and one that will, I think, lead to further discussions with them, not just with Karen, but the whole business development group as a whole.
Excuse my ignorance, but with the business development group, is that somebody who's the chair? Like, if you're talking about Karen, I don't think I've met her. And what's her role? And is that a position that she does as a member of the group and as a business owner herself, or is it as a funded position or something? You're muted, Jack, by the way.
Councillor Kosh has got his hand up. Just need to unmute, Councillor. Just unmute.
Okay, right. So Brian Sample is the board member and I'm the proxy, but I go to all the meetings anyway. The board is funded by a levy of all commercial and industrial businesses in the town, and those funds are used to engage a consultant who's Karen, who's like the CEO, you know, like the executive officer, and there's an admin person as well, and then they liaise with business and help them, you know, help them along, etc., etc. Plus they run events and workshops and activities. Yeah, so it's sort of funded by the businesses. It's a sort of a model. For example, if you're in a shopping centre, the shopping centre will run activities and run things, but because these are individual businesses, you need another way of providing a service and promoting those businesses. So that's what they do. Yep.
Thanks, Paul. That's really good to know, because then, you know, you've actually got somebody whose job it is to help make these things happen. So that's really good to know.
Yeah,
And I
so
think
she's the executive officer, and you've got Louise Drummond, who is the chairperson.
The chair.
Yep.
Fantastic. That's wonderful. That's great to hear such a positive meeting. That's very exciting. Wonderful. Did Tim or Jack want to continue on?
Okay. The third item was actively contribute content to the Climate Emergency Action Plan. So we've had members adding content and helping to populate that document. I'll probably still be looking for further work on the introduction to key areas of the document. So getting the kind of culture of the document, getting the context of the document right. Paul, you've got to unmute, Paul.
Oh, sorry, unmute. Unmute. Okay.
You're okay now. It's
Right,
unmuted. Yep.
Now, I had a chat with Catherine about this, and what I've gone away and done, I've actually started to write, I suppose, I don't know if it's too late, but a writing plan, because that's sort of what I do. And I've sort of gone through and looked at the target group. I've looked at outcomes. I've looked at editorial guidelines, and I've picked up some information, and I've really based that on the Australian Psychological Society. So I've done that, and their key points, and that gives you if you've got some editorial guidelines, it actually helps you to frame things. And then I've written a bit of an introduction, and that's as far as I've got. But anyway, so I thought I'd just do that to get my head around it. Yeah, because this is what I do for a business, and that's how I do things. I write writing plans and write outcomes, and I write what the elements are going to be, and I almost write I do a framework, a physical framework, write a physical framework. Then I have my editorial guidelines that I work with. And then as long as I know my outcomes, like what I want to achieve, everything else just flows from there. So I've sort of just gone back and looked at it through what I do through my business, essentially. So I've just got a bit of fiddling around with, because I need to think about the structure of what I would think the structure would be. I would consider it to be a narrative, and then probably then there's the strategies, the goals and the strategies as potentially as two separate parts. So you have a narrative where you're explaining concepts, etc., and then you have the goals and the strategies, but you link those two. So if you're talking about a concept in the narrative, you actually then you provide examples that residents can use, and then examples of what we would want to do. So it's a real, I still have to think. I'm just thinking through how I would actually lay it out as a document, and get that flow of information from sort of start to finish to get the outcomes within the guidelines. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. It was an excellent. I thought it was a really good conversation that we had, and I certainly gained a deeper understanding of the intent behind it, and I think it will really add value to the document. And I definitely, some of the bits that my takeaway things were around having some specific, almost like learning objectives that we want people to take home after having used that document. So yes, it's a reference document, but also there's some overarching outcomes that we want to see. So I thought that was a really useful conversation. I'm thrilled that you've started to really engage in that document from your professional perspective.
Yes, we had a bit of time, so I thought I'd just do it in between it. Yeah, and also what I find is if you can keep the objectives down to about five main objectives. The way the mind works is 5 is about the number that people can actually comprehend and cognitively, relate to. If you get 7 or 10, it's just too much. So if you have 5 main objectives, that's the best. And I've sort of identified 5, and then from the 5 main objectives, you'd have say about 5 elements or topics or pieces that you want to talk about. Again, just 5, and then you try to integrate them all together. So you end up with this really nice, I suppose, really nice integrated document that flows and takes people on a journey, and hopefully to an end where they've got a new understanding and hopefully some behavioural changes. Yep, that's how I do it. That's how I work through things. Yep.
Well, we want to benefit from that. We want the plan to be as good as it can be, and have it do as much with it as we possibly can. So what I'll do is I'll finish off. Because when I'm out writing, so I think about things, and when I was writing, I was thinking about how I would structure it between the narrative and the goals and the strategies, and how they would link together. I still need to just work through that a little bit more, and then I can put that into a bit of a document and go and just send it out to everybody and see what they think. Yep. Marvellous, thank you.
No worries.
I think this will have to be an iterative process as well, because we're already working on things. We actually don't know what the outcomes are going to be, so we're exploring different options as we go, and we'll have to try and build the introduction and the thinking and the education components. We'll have to adjust the actions around what we've already been identifying. So this is going to take some toing and froing until we get to the end.
I suppose, the outcome, just more higher order outcomes, not, the percentage of renewable energy, or, it's actually, higher order objectives. But anyway, I'll leave that. Yeah, and also I write them as behavioural outcomes, so you can actually, but not in some terms, be able to measure something. So you can actually say that somebody understands something, or recognise something, or identifies something, or has an appreciation of something. So it's more the higher order objectives, but then you work down to those other elements, which might be the percentage of renewable energy, or whatever whatever you want.
Yeah, so it's more stylistic than content.
Yeah, it's
like all the facts and figures that we're not talking about that. That's one layer,
that's not the
and then what you're talking about is the presentation of it all. Yeah,
it's the cognitive change you want in people. It's the thing in the head that goes, wait a minute, I've got a different worldview now. That's what I'm talking about. Because what happens is you have to provide a journey for people to change their worldview. That's how adults work. That's the psychology of adults learning. So you need to provide this journey that then changes their worldview, and and by putting that into a document in a certain way, you can actually achieve that by actually changing people's worldview.
Now, Paul, when you're talking like this, are you talking about the council's own operations or the community response? Because if you're talking about the council's own operations, when we go out to the community, that already has to have been decided. It has to have been, well, the council's been looking at this. What we've agreed to do is this, this, and this.
And so that's what I was saying. I need to just sort of work the narrative, which is the conceptual stuff, in with what council said it's going to do. So what you do is you work through a narrative, and for residents, you say, well, these are the things that you can do, and then you go to the next step. So this is what we're doing as an example. So you've actually got tangible examples that are relatable back to the residential or the business. So you need to. So this whole journey from, nothing, I suppose, and to a new worldview or a new point of consciousness with people. So you're taking people on a journey. So
it's going to be one heck of a document.
Well, it's interesting because if you can sort of weave it up, it's they're quite gentle on the mind if you can get it right.
That sounds fantastic.
Thank
you very much. Paul. Really
I'm trying to mind map that as we're thinking about
I've been in this space for 30 years, so don't worry.
Okay.
We're in safe hands.
Yeah.
But I think what I'm hearing is that this is largely in the community space.
Yes,
and
so
that's where I would really valuable. I think Paul could just go to town into sort of introducing that and weaving that through the document and in those.
And so what you need to do is, and I call it the narrative, because that's the first bit where you're introducing concepts and working through a concept to an outcome, and then you relate that to the actual what council's going to do in tangible terms, so people can see, at the home level compared to roughly at at the home to at the community level. So there's a connection between the two, the same concept but a connection. So it's I'll do a bit more on it and see what you think. But it's sort of it is weaving some different elements together, learning elements together, and so also the theory of learning when it comes to concepts is different to skills. So I need to weave in, the learning principles behind learning a concept, which are different to learning a skill. So so it's just a little bit of effort on my part to sort it out.
And the plan will be all the better for it. So
we'll see. Hopefully.
Absolutely. Tim, did you want to?
I'll continue on. We had on item 6, subject to members having opportunity to comment on document, prepare and engage a consultant. Well, that actually work has proceeded. So we're going to get a preliminary health check on the content of our document so far, and they'll also give us a number of ideas on what else we need to do to pull it into shape. We haven't provided the document to anybody yet, so we're going to keep working on the content of it over the next week or so. And I guess where we're at mainly to date is on council activities, which is always the first main area of getting our own house in order. So a lot of the documents spent on that. It still needs a lot more work done on the community space, but we'll get some ideas from the consultant as well on what else we would need to do to finish it and prepare it to go out to public consultation down the track. On item 7, a special CEAP working group on the renewable energy feasibility project. Well, this is also connected with item 8 on getting some advice on how to manage all of the tendering process and things like that. And what we've actually agreed on is to really progress this in-house from the information that we've developed, and we provided a brief draft of ideas to the working group at the last meeting, and we got some comments back. So we've taken those comments, but we actually think that it's appropriate that we just push that ahead in-house now, because otherwise we'll get into all sorts of other issues. So it was really about seeking advice from the market on how to ask the right questions next time. On the EV demonstration, we've had that. For those members that were able to attend, I think it was a really good day. Everybody got to have a drive who wanted to have a drive. It was really nice to see Mayor Redmond come along and participate. We got some great information and better understanding of electric vehicles on the day. Councillor Kosh was there, who participated as well, so that was great. Catherine came along, so yeah, it was really good, I think, and it was positively received by all the staff that attended. And somehow the word got out to the Gawler Car Club, so we had a lot of Gawler Car Club people there as well.
I do have the official lap times, Tim, of the trip around the car park, but I won't say who took out the first place. I'll leave that for later.
I think I hold that in reverse, actually.
Reverse.
If I could just say, well, thank Tim for organising it. Just on the vehicle on the day, it was obviously a prototype, so that when you drove it, it was pretty rough, but the elements are there, and there's a whole lot of improvements such as regenerative braking, etc., that will come in the next, like the production model. So if they can keep it around the $40,000 mark, it's not bad value. And with that range, if they include the the other things they're talking about, it'd be a fairly good deal, I reckon.
And I think the key part around progressing that is obviously we want to take advantage if there's purchasing happening sooner rather than later. We want to make sure that we've got them thinking about that type, like at least that's being considered, and also that the work that Tim's been looking at doing in terms of the comparing apples with apples in terms of the lifetime costings of the vehicles as well. So and having that as a live assessment process, I think, because I think currently what the council does is not comparing apples with apples across internal combustion vehicles and electric vehicles, that it's not being compared appropriately, and it'd be really good if we can get that looked at more thoroughly.
Yeah, you just need an agreed approach by everybody to, one, you need people that are willing to drive the cars, and two, you need an agreed approach to doing the financial assessment of it. And that includes incorporating the greenhouse mitigation benefits as well. So I'm confident that we'll move ahead on that fairly quickly and put the council in a good position to be able to make decisions. And
then obviously there's broader fleet issues that we can incorporate into the plan in the future as well. So we're kind of getting two bites of the cherry, so to speak. Lovely, thank you.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to add, it was also quite good, the notion of the local sort of like manufacturing process, like they were planning on doing the getting the Elizabeth Sonnen batteries for future models, and then using Adelaide manufacturing systems and parts. So it's kind of good in that sense that we are trying to get that local economy and that local connection, a bit broader than just Gawler, but still a good talking point as well for the car.
Yeah, certainly Northern Adelaide.
Yeah, Nathan, you had your hand up?
Yeah, sorry I'm late, everybody. Yeah, finished work a bit late. So, but I was just going to comment. I talked to Paul after the demonstration. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it there, but I think I highlighted it last time. It'd be really clever and sort of really good if we got a review from Paul. I mean, some of the conversations that I've had with Paul after were very constructive. Like I learned a lot from what he was sort of telling me, and I was wondering, is there a bit of
rambling?
Oh, I mean, yeah, but some of the key points that you were able to give me, and Jack sort of reminded me just then when he pointed out the local, you know, the local side of it, and they came down from Queensland. It's a better suit. You know, some of those key points. If there was like an A4 document that we were able just to put out as the Climate Emergency Action Plan group and endorse it as council, just as a, you know what I mean? Like just a bit of a cheat sheet around electric vehicles right now of how it sits and what we've learnt, I think would be sort of, I don't know, just a bit beneficial given the traction that it has right now. Is any of that making sense?
Like electric car 101.
Yeah, that's right. Coming from, you know, Councillor Kosh, who obviously has been driving an electric car for so long, and just, it's a little bit of a standalone thing, but it's just to keep everyone sort of informed simply now. I don't know, just a thought.
It's kind of a community engagement. You
Yeah,
can,
that's right. Yeah, just a quick comparison, simplifying what we looked at. Like we know what we looked at, but what did we look at in a term that can be understood by your local ratepayer?
That's an interesting idea, and I was thinking that I mean, I don't want to make anybody do extra work, but Paul, if something could be drafted that was simple, that covered off on those kind of, you know, like dealt with all the common queries that people have about electric cars, but then it may not be immediately useful, but I think it'll come into its own while we're doing the public consultation, and when we're really going public, to already have that little document that we can just use. That could be quite useful.
Yes, yeah, that's sort of the thought, like an A4 sheet that just, so for example, Paul, you were telling me the range that your car gets, for example, and the chargeability of it and how far, you know, just those little quick info points that you pointed out. And then you also compared your current car with what you tested. And I found that quite interesting because I don't know anything in that space technically, but the way that you highlighted it really simply, the idiot that drives a diesel car picked up what you were saying straight away. I could relate.
Oh, if you could scratch them down, if you could just write them down and send them to me.
No worries. All right, maybe I'll just do a little bit of an email and just see what you reckon. But then the A4 page is like a brochure style, like.
Well, I could write a book on it, but I won't.
Yeah, no.
I could do an A4, I suppose.
No, don't write a book. Just
talking about doing something on an A4 scale size, it would be good to have this as a like a little sort of a feature or a case study or a special thing that we include in the Climate Emergency Action Plan, sort of saying that we've looked at electric vehicles. This is what we reckon about electric vehicles and the benefits of actually engaging with this, supporting local industry where we can. And then we can also talk about what we've done on the life cycle assessment. Hopefully we'll get that done as well. And then that forms a foundation for a really good recommendation to the council, or a really good justification for what we do in the plan.
Yeah, it's creating almost a little bit of clickbait that council can share on their Facebook page, and it gives a little bit of an update on what the Climate Emergency Action Plan group is working on, and just here's a little teaser, and then just leave it at that.
Yeah,
I think, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I suppose what I could do is just look at the usual myths around electric cars and just respond to those in relation to what we experienced.
Yeah, perfect.
Charging time, etc.
And range, it's not just range anxiety. I think most people don't realise how far they don't drive. Like when most trips are like under 5 kilometers and things like that, and they're freaking out about not being able to do 500 kilometers on a trip. I'm going, well, hang on.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing was my previous car, which was a little, little tin box conversion, it only had a range of 100 Ks, and that did 90% of our driving needs. Just a little 100K tin box. It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
People don't.
I think yeah, people just freak out about that and they just completely forget, like they don't. Perhaps they're just not aware of their own driving patterns.
Yeah, and also, I mean, you have to realise that we were getting all these charging stations now, so go anywhere in regional South Australia now without any problems at all, because there's enough charging facilities around. Like we go to Port Augusta, or we go over to the York Peninsula, or down the down the Fleurieu or whatever. Charging stations, we just rock off and drive away and just charge up, and away we go.
If it's all right with Paul, then can we maybe, if anybody's got any thoughts, an action for them is to email Paul with their preconceived, ideas that really,
and potentially just relate it back to what we did as a group, and that particularly that vehicle and its workability as a town vehicle.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking of using the hype around it right now, just to plant a seed, and then and then just leave it there, and then when we do get to a point where we're talking about doing a switchover, we then bring it back out again and go, oh look, remember this,
and it's done, and we created it while we were all enthusiastic about it, and then it's a piece of work that's now been done, and we dust it off whenever we need it.
Yeah, that's right. And
maybe anybody who participated in the trial, if they could just maybe send a sentence or two to Paul about what their perception of it was and their experience, and then maybe if there's anything that jumps out, Paul, that's a bit of material that you can just make use of.
I get a few cues. I'll be right, but
I know when you really know a subject, it's really hard to do it short. I totally get that.
That's the hardest thing.
It is.
You want to write a book.
But then that's when I think we can jump in and turn around and go, Paul, like that's the stuff that you've lost interest, like you've lost us. Yeah. And I can do the same about buildings.
The Idiot's Guide to Electric Cars.
That's all it is. That's right. And I could ramble on about building for all night and I'll lose you, but we can get those key points where it's the clickbait. So anyway, just an idea, and
we've given Paul more work today, so we're doing really well. Sorry, Paul. Anyway,
just to finish off, so that we can
before you change your mind.
Run out of time.
Tim, you were
too long. So just to finish off on the actions arising, we did draft some questions on the electric vehicles before the demonstration. Now, I've got some responses here. I haven't actually worked through them, not a whole lot, but I think the questions were really interesting, and I'd like to maybe put that in a staff survey down the track. Anyway, those questions were drafted, that was fine. I think we'll work on the key messages. And the last one of the business arising was that members were encouraged to read the climate risk documents before tonight's meeting so that we could have a discussion about that climate risk approach, and including an element of recommending climate risk and governance in the Climate Emergency Action Plan.
Tim, I couldn't find those documents. Where were they?
They're in the folder created for tonight's meeting, which was called the June 18 CEAP meeting.
Wasn't Google Docs?
Yeah, Google Docs.
I couldn't find them.
It was a little bit difficult. I just got them up and running. It's a bit of they're in a folder. It was a bit of a search in playing within Google Docs to get them to appear. So
I couldn't find them at all.
Sometimes, Paul, look on the shared with you. It's a column on the left-hand side of Google Docs, and it says shared with you.
That's where I found it. Mine says shared with me. So, well, it could be, maybe it's the one before that, but that's where I found it. Yeah.
So what those documents, look, we've got an agenda item for it, so we can keep moving for now.
Okay, thanks, Tim. sorry, I just had to click off to get my document to move. So, so we're moving on to the item listed for discussion, and the Climate Emergency Action Plan and the schedule. So Tim, I'm assuming you want to lead this conversation?
Yeah, so the schedule was included in the, I'm getting feedback again, somebody will have to unmute.
It's me.
Thank you. So the schedule was included in the attachments on that folder for this meeting. What we did was we had a look at what we need to do to complete the document this calendar year, and we've worked backwards from that. Sometimes the timeframes are a bit tight, and then it's followed by periods where there'll be ample period to look and review at the document as we're waiting for other things to take place. So I don't know if you've all had a chance to look at that schedule. I had a chat with Jack before tonight's meeting, and there's some potential risk that after we have community consultation, we'll need to do a community consultation report, and that might take another month to go to council with the community consultation report and report back on what we found, unless we kind of integrate two processes together, and I'm not quite sure on that. So broadly speaking, we've made a start on the plan. We've got some good content happening. More will be done in the current week, in the immediate future, and then there'll be periods where we need to approach the community and seek their ideas. And there are risks if we leave it too long. So if we push into middle of next year and then late next year, there's going to be some pushback on why haven't we delivered. We've also got the other alternative in that we don't want to rush things too much, because then you cut corners and end up with a document that's not supported, not agreed, and might have some mistakes in it. So we've sort of mapped out this schedule as an initial schedule of being aspirational and to keep things moving, so that we are actually actively contributing all the time when we can, and we at least for the first time have a clear schedule of how we would go about completing the document. I'd also say that the document itself isn't everything, because we are never going to have all of the answers for things like the renewable energy strategy. We won't have those in this version, in this iteration of the document. It's about coming up with an emergency action plan that maps out what actions we're going to do in the future. And then we will go away and do those actions, and then we would have to revisit the plan and update it on an annual basis, or do the annual business planning side of it. So you might have a more general longer term plan, but you'll be updating it annually in accordance with business planning. They're the sorts of things that we'll need to do to finish the document off. So it's really open for discussion now as to whether we're comfortable that we can work with those guidelines for now. If we have to push into next year, well, then that'll probably happen regardless of what we decide tonight. But this is a way of really trying to focus on completion of the document.
Well, I think it's a really good framework to operate to, and we'll all work hard and do our best to stick with it. I agree. There's a real tension between delivering on what the working group needs to deliver on in a timely fashion, but also realizing, like I was just looking through how many meetings we'd had, and I think this is the 10th meeting that we've had, and we only really got going in November last year, in terms of having your position filled, Tim, and Jack having the bit of headspace to be able to run with it, and then we had fires and pandemics and little things like that. So 10 meetings isn't a lot to try and save the world. So it's a very broad complicated thing that we're trying to put together. So I think we need to, you know, be somewhat kind to ourselves in that we're, you know, it's a tall order, and we're, you know, we're making steady. I think we're making steady, sensible progress. I think our priorities are right, but you know, I'm probably very supportive of where we're at anyway. So I think that's really good. But yeah. Definitely, I think kind of I would encourage all the members about all the things that you've ever wanted to see Gawler do in the climate space to put it in the plan or forever hold your peace kind of thing. You know, I think, you know, if you want stuff done and you've got dreams of this, that and the other, don't worry about, you know, whether or not it'll fit, or if you haven't got it all figured out yet, bung it in there. Get it in there, and then we can develop it or work on it. But you know, I definitely encourage people to put that stuff in. Tim or Jack, have you got more to say on that?
Tim, did you want to go through that list that we've prepared? That was in you know, the key dates and milestones, or were we quite happy with what we've just? I was happy with what what Tim's just said, unless you know, the group wanted to go through it in detail.
Tim, you're muted.
I wasn't planning on going through the document in minute detail, because then we'll just get into all sorts of discussion about it. I think if anybody wants to make comments or feedback or say, well, we need to make time for this, please get back to me. But it's really a working schedule which we've drafted initially, and I've put it up there. And yeah, it makes time so that we can get some peer review, get ready for public consultation, check back with elected members, then go to consultation, and then integrate the feedback from consultation, and then move towards finishing the document. It's just a plan to do that. There are some meeting dates, CEAP meeting dates, that I've kind of adjusted a little bit towards the end of the year, just so that we can have you know, input and agree on things, and then still have time for it to go to council at the next meeting.
That's excellent. I'm just noticing the document of the agenda, our agenda today, the numbering jumps from 5.2 to 5.4s. There doesn't seem to be a 5.3. So I'm just assuming, Tim and Jack, that you'll take us through right through all of the 5.2s.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. Well, it's all yours. Tim, you're muted still.
You'll have to go.
He's just dropped out. Are you okay, or you're logging back in?
I'm logging back in. I must have had the wrong one plugged in.
Oh, your power cable's gone.
Yeah, I had the wrong cord plugged in.
Oh, okay. He's just logging back on. Just a minute. But I'm having difficulty to him with the attachments. 5.2.2.
Tom, did you mean to have your hand raised?
Yes, or like this, or like that.
Okay. Okay. Sorry about this. Sorry about this. Yeah.
Yeah. So you know, like you know, I think that maybe we don't need to have a document finished at certain times, but we can maybe discuss the topics that are of the value to the council and have some kind of an outcome before we compile all the information. Because what could happen that in the process, our decisions won't be any more relevant to the topic we are talking about at the moment.
Thanks,
so, like,
Ryan. I also would like to just add in that Tim and I are partway through the consultation discussions with all of the councillors on what they would like to see and what they think is important for the plan as well. So we've already started that process and it will be almost complete by the end of next week. But yeah, so we're getting our way through that now.
Well, I'll just unmute you, Tim. There you go.
And Jack, you'll have to mute yourself. I think we've covered some of this on the Climate Emergency Action Plan already. So we have gone out.
Tim, Nathan's just got his hand up.
Nathan?
Unmute.
Yeah, sorry. I just picking up on what you said about the interviewing of the other councillors. How's all that going? Are you well received? How are you finding that? Just out of interest. I know I've got mine booked for next Wednesday, but yeah, just a quick little update there.
Yeah, we've done one, but I've booked all the others in, or nearly all the others in. It's been the first conversation I had was with Ian Tooley. So obviously he had lots of things to say and discuss, but it was a very positive, supportive conversation. The conversations that I've had with people or with the councillors just in booking their sessions have all been positive. So far, everybody's excited to hear. They're looking forward to learning more. So far, yeah, I've just had immediate uptake and nothing but positivity at this point.
Oh, cool. Yeah, no worries. That's good to know.
Tim?
Okay, so back to 5.2.2, peer review of the draft CEAP. So we have gone to market and we'll be hearing back from potential providers shortly on having a look at our draft CEAP. So what I'm really going to be focusing in on the next week or two is actually putting as much in the document as we can. And that way they'll at least be able to say, well, on content wise, you've got this or you're missing that. And they'll also be able to make some suggestions on the rest of the document to help us polish it up. And then we'll also have to continue to work on it with the input that Paul Kosh is going to make and all of those other things, and that's all fine. It's not going to hurt us to have a health check of the document at an early stage before we do too much more. If there's no comments on that, I'll move on to 5.2.4, but are there any comments on that? No? Okay, so I think we've covered 5.2.3 document progress. On the informed city risk and governance inclusion in the CEAP as an action. So I'm not sure how many of you have had a chance to read the documents or not. There was about 3 documents in there. But what they've done in the Southern Councils, and I think City of Adelaide's done it too, is that they had a look at climate risk and governance, and it's really aimed at the administration and elected members getting a really good handle on what is climate risk and how to go about managing those risks in a very defendable way, so that no matter what happens in the future, they've exercised their due diligence. And we thought that it was an excellent program. We've been given the opportunity to participate in such a program. It was about $10,000 per council. And we think that that would be a really good type of initiative to include in the Climate Emergency Action Plan. I'm not suggesting we do it tomorrow, but what I am suggesting is that we put it in the plan with a bit of a narrative, scoping what is the outcome that we want, what is the background, what is our strategy, and what are we going to do about it, just in that simple type of a format, so that it's an action in the plan.
Sounds good to me, Tim. Has anybody got any other comments? Have they read the document or had thoughts? what I like about it is that it deals, it really highlights adaptation as well. And that's that natural kind of area that councils often operate in. And I'm quite pleased with that because I've seen our role as really trying to push the barrow on mitigation as much as possible, because mitigation is where our current window of opportunity is closing. And adaptation, we're going to have a long time to adapt to all this stuff, you know, like we're going to have the impacts for a long time to come, and plenty of time to adapt, or once mitigation is not so much of an option. So I think that's useful.
I guess, sorry, Nathan, Councillor Shanks.
Yeah, I mean, I've sort of skimmed the document, to be completely honest, but there were a lot of sort of tables and some takeaway information there that I went, oh, fantastic! Like it's already done, like copy paste right there. Those are the overarching statements that apply to Gawler straight away. So yeah, it was good to see it sort of formatted like that. I found that really sort of helpful, and there was a bit of takeaway there that I still want to claw through it a bit, but yeah, a couple of simple tables and stuff like that I found yeah, good.
I think what they did with their process was that they had a process of engagement, so that they were going through that information and those tables and the rationale and the learning you know, together, and getting everybody on the same page. So that's that's going to give us buy-in down the track on why this work is important, why it needs to continue, and all the rest of it. So that's kind of what I like about the project is that it's a process. One of the things that we would need to consider is, whilst we're looking at that, and I've just sold it as an idea to go into the plan and not do, we've still got the issue of the budget and a very constrained budget this year. But if there are initiatives and things that we should be doing, well, then we'll still have to think about when we put those up to be attempted.
Well, I think last night, Paul, we were talking about the LED changing over in the streetlights, weren't we? So, you know, that's moving up on our list of priorities at the moment. So, oh, you're muted, Paul.
Yeah, yes, we had a work last night, and the federal government has given us, each council, $2 million to largesse, and 2 items that we're looking at, which probably potentially get up, is to replace all the street lights, 3,000 street lights with LEDs and building lights. So that's going to save, was it 25% of our energy bill? And then also put a 100 kilowatt system up as well. So that's going to knock off another, I think 18%. I don't know, I need the figures. So we could be sort of skimming away at, well, I was just looking at it, maybe 37% of our current electricity bill could be skimmed away just from that generous amount of money from the federal government.
Is that got pretty significant overlap with the intent of the feasibility study that we're looking at doing that?
Yeah, I mean, we need to look at that, because because we actually looked at and there's 10 items that we had on our list, and we sort of all agreed that they were good items, and potentially that will probably get up at a council meeting. So we could have, you know, all the street lights changed to LEDs, and all the lights in the buildings changed, and 100 kilowatts put up. We need to find that.
Where would that 100 kilowatts of electricity go?
Well, that's where we that was asked. We don't know where it would go yet, but that's sort of it's pipeline.
That's exactly the issues that we're looking to flesh out with the feasibility study, in terms of a long-term.
Yeah, well, the funding's probably there.
Yeah, we literally just got this information sort of last night.
We got it last night, so it's all
press.
Yeah, okay. So we've got a little bit of a cart before the horse wheel going on.
Because we could be in a situation where that might not, like, I'm just saying, like, putting heaps and heaps of PV on might not be the best way to spend that money in terms of electricity, energy efficiency, and value for money in terms of that. And that was the whole point behind the feasibility study. So what was do we have we don't really know with the price of the feasibility study yet though, do we?
Not the biggest feasibility study. The initial one is only a small project to give us the answers to go to help scope what we asked for the bigger study.
Nathan?
Do you mind if I just share this screen that sort of is pretty easy to have a look at? So as you can see, these are the 10 items that Paul had alluded to. And this is the, the solar panel one that we're talking about here. We're sort of talking about maybe allocating 120 grand to that. Where I was street lighting, 250 grand. So these are the 10 items that have been put to us that we, now that we have an extra $2 million, might be worthy to look into. So yeah, again, this is fresh off the press, and this is what we were sort of given last night. Irrigation efficiencies as well.
Yeah, so there's a whole range of stuff. I mean, the LED lights, I mean, you obviously do that. You obviously do that.
Yeah. And I think if it's solar panels on 2 buildings, that gives us a lot more scope. Sorry, Jack.
Maybe I got that wrong. Yeah, we need to find the buildings that it's appropriate for.
There's opportunity at both the Civic Centre and the Sports and Community Centre to do more. But it's just the way it's been presented.
I mean, there's an opportunity there. It's an opportunity there to really, I think, knock down our energy consumption by about 37% in one hit.
I mean, that's quite substantial if we can do that. Yeah.
Because the LED lights are actually the street lights and building. It's not only the 3,000 street lights, it's also the buildings. So you're not
and the street, because the street lights were about 62%, I think, from memory, and the changeover. Sorry.
I think they're one of the highest at the moment, Tim. I think from memory when we looked at
it was the biggest single chunk for the council, absolutely, and the savings were, I think it was 45% of that chunk, which translated to about 20-25%, and then all the additional.
25%.
I'm not going to go into
I'm
not going to go into percentages too much, but street lighting is half of our electricity use, and if you replaced it with LEDs, you would reduce street lighting electricity consumption by about 50%.
Yep. So it's a great.
It's great. I mean, there's lots of good things about.
You also stop sharing this if that's all right, unless you guys want to keep on looking at it, or all good.
No, that's fine.
All good.
Yeah. So that's sort of in the cards. It's only because it's from the federal government to stimulate local economy.
I mean, Tim and I actually spoke about this earlier on today, and here's a prime opportunity for, say, the LGA and the procurement group to actually get on board. And we have seen emails already coming through regarding this as of late last night, that here's the opportunity to really come together as a broad community and make this work really, really well. So instead of going piecemeal and, one council doing this and someone else doing that, really challenge, the whole process and the funding. I think
it'd be fantastic. You can do the whole state, I reckon. Get your act together, and use local contractors to do the work, and do this big procurement to buy the stuff and recycle what's left over, recycle what's left, the bulbs, and call contractors to do the work.
I'd just seen the email late last night, and I was up on Greenhill Road at a meeting, and then coming through North Adelaide, seeing all the LEDs, and Tim and I were talking about it this morning, thinking this really has potential for some great outcomes here. So
I mean,
there's some of the biggest chunks, and it's fantastic that the street lighting project was already on the list. I mean, that's fantastic.
I couldn't help myself. I couldn't help myself, but I passed a cheeky comment to our engineers today and said, "Hey."
Yeah. I made an effort to push it in.
Yeah.
Or to be honest, if we didn't give those facts and figures just recently, it probably wouldn't have been as an obvious.
It was only because I had it was only because I had Tim's pie chart that I was able to talk about it.
Yeah, that's right. So it's a bit of a pat on the back there.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
To see that.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can get that other 2.4 million waived, and maybe we'll see another list.
Yeah, laughing.
We can spend it. It's fine. We've got lots of ideas.
Yeah, well, we're knocking over the energy we have to. Because I reckon it's up around getting close to 40% reduction across the. By the time you take the LED lights in the streets and the buildings and another 100 kilowatts, you're probably getting close to 40% off. Off our energy consumption.
It's not quite that simple, because you knock it off the energy consumption, not necessarily you knock it off the bill, because you still got to pay to be a customer. So
I'm just sort of thinking, what people are going to.
That's the argument Tim and I need to have with certain people. So.
And then you've got to also keep in mind that if in the future the council decides to heat the Gawler pool with heat pumps instead of the gas boiler, and I've had a really informative conversation with a heat pump guy yesterday, which I've passed the details on to Tim and Jack. But that might add a little bit back on, but it's good energy.
Would that be renewable energy, Catherine? Would you be able to put panels up at the pool? And
you could definitely put panels up at the pool, absolutely. But we just worked on basic figures with a default price of energy from the grid. But just the headline points were, if you shift over to heat pumps, you reduce the power consumption by 80%. 80%.
Yeah, so you reduce.
That would reduce. Sorry, Tim.
You reduce your gas consumption to nil.
Yeah, you reduce your gas consumption to nil. You reduce your energy consumption by 80% all over, because the coefficient of what they call it, it's a COP. It's a coefficient of performance. In a gas boiler, you put in 1 unit of energy of gas and you get 0.9 units of energy effect, basically. With a heat pump, you put in 1 unit and you get 6.5 units of energy, right? And so, so the 80%, that's the 80%.
Okay.
That would, on their calculations, which are just based on default figures, and they're fairly good estimates, but we need to go through it. So we can't use these figures as guaranteed at this point in time, but it could be close, but we do need to check. It would reduce the cost of running the heating for the pool by 40%. And it would reduce the carbon emissions by 65%.
At the pool.
Good news story.
Yeah. So, and the really good thing is heat pumps last twice as long as gas boilers. Yeah. And if we ever upgrade the pool, we just take the heat pumps off and then put them back on the new pool if it's suitable, which it most likely would be, or you can just go take those units and use them somewhere else in the council. So you can use them for any water heating purposes that you want. So it's never a wasted infrastructure spend. It's got a lifetime and we can use it for other things. So that was the kind of headline points from the meeting. But that was based on data that the council staff provided as well. So they provided specific information around the volume of the pool and usage times and things like that. So it's a pretty educated piece of information that we've got, but we do need to double check a couple of things, in particular the price of energy.
Well, that's dropping, isn't it? I thought it was down to a couple of cents a kilowatt hour during the day.
Yeah, I don't know what the council pays, as a, because there's the difference between the kind of rate kilowatt hour fee that they give you, plus all your supply charges and things like that as well, and that needs to kind of be taken into account. So, but that Tim's got that bit of work to do yet.
If you like, I'll come back to the. There'll be confidential figures, but I could share off camera down the track the rates that we're paying for electricity.
That'd be good to see, actually. Yeah.
Savings we'd be making.
Mm. Yeah, it'd be nice to see the actual figure per kilowatt plus all the add-ons.
Yeah, and all the add-ons actually are about half of what we pay for electricity. The add-ons are significant and are getting bigger. In the end, it'll be almost 99% of the cost will be just being a customer and a lot less for the energy. I think that's the way it's going to go.
So, Tim, would it be better to produce your own energy, put it in a battery and use it yourself, be off-grid?
Oh, for some people, they'll make that decision, but you've also got the reliability of the grid that we also need for most businesses and offices and dwellings. So
yeah, it's sort of an equity issue as well about having the grid, so that's important.
Yeah, and the more people that drop off the grid, the more everybody else has to pay for it. So
yeah, it's not very equitable. Yeah, true.
Yeah, we have to find that balance down the track.
You do. Social. Yep.
So where are we at?
The 5, I think
5.3.
I think we've covered that one, Tim. I reckon with the business development group engagement.
Yeah,
earlier.
I think so. Yeah.
I think we covered a fair bit in the business arising, and not leaving it to the actual agenda. So next time we'll have to say it's covered in the agenda and not discuss it in the business arising. On council feedback on progress reports, well, actually, it's not a progress report. What we did was we put a paper up to council on the LGA motion last council meeting at the end of May, and that was to put the original motion for Town of Gawler.
Well, back on the agenda for Garrock.
Yes.
And that was endorsed, so that's now progressed, and that's progressed through to the LGA. So we'll just sit and wait and see how the board reacts to that. And I think Councillor Kosh, you were part of that discussion, I think, and at that meeting.
I thought the motion was that it went to the LGA board members, not Garrock. Oh.
Direct. I think it went direct to the board.
Yeah, that's what
The board, yeah, I do have it here, so possibly I'm getting my wires crossed.
It was complied with exactly with the motion that was passed by council, so that's just been done anyway. So we dealt with the progress report the month before, so sorry I put that in there like that. Now there's a new item here called Climate Emergency Australia and Options for Participation. So I circulated some attachments to that, attachments 5, 6 and 7. But what it basically is that as an outcome of the National Climate Emergency Summit in February this year, this new Australian collaborative group across councils was formed called Climate Emergency Australia. Now they've drafted terms of reference and they've established a governance arrangement, and they would like to continue that at least for the next 12 months. And they've approached councils with an invitation to participate as climate emergency councils, and that's open to those councils that have declared a climate emergency and are prepared to sign up to statements and commitments in accordance with declaring climate emergency. So that's fairly basic. Then there's another level which is open to councils to become a funding founder or a founding funder, where they could contribute some money to help support the administration and the governance for the next 12 months. And then for councils that are founding funders, they also have the ability to nominate members to become part of the strategic advisory group for council, for the organisation. So we received these documents fairly late last month, and we shared them with the executive team, and they've come back to us and said, hey, we'd really like to hear what the Climate Emergency Action Working Group think about our participation. So we brought it to this group to think about what level of participation we should have and make a recommendation. Now, before I stop speaking, there's another element to this as well, and that is that 2 South Australian councils have proposed nominating members to be on the Strategic Advisory Group. And they are the City of Charles Sturt and the City of Campbelltown. So it'll be the Mayor from Charles Sturt, and it would be the officer, the climate officer from Campbelltown. And I've got no problems with those. I think they'd be great members on the Strategic Advisory Group. Now, when we prepared our thoughts to go further, I documented a couple of things that we would need to consider. One of them is that we're a small council. We've got limited resources. We're still trying to put together our own climate emergency action plan, and we need to really focus on getting on and doing that first, almost before we've got spare resources to dedicate to going on a national advisory group. So that sort of lent me towards suggesting that it'd be really great if we became a CEA council, no problems. I'd have to sort of say that we'll need to recognise that any further involvement would either come from a councillor or would be, if it came from staff, would take staff time to participate further on the Strategic Advisory Group. However, even as a CEA council, we can still contribute as working group members. The other councils have donated some money. So Campbelltown have committed $2,000, and City of Charles Sturt have committed $5,000. And that gets them to be able to nominate a person to be on the Strategic Advisory Group. We don't have to nominate anything. We could just be a CEA council, or we could consider being a founding funder, and we would determine the amount ourselves. But I would sort of say we shouldn't pledge too much, because then that's going to take resources and financial resources from elsewhere.
Now, just wanted to add, there is a report going to council next week on this, and one of the recommendations is that we do contribute as a founding funder to the CEA to about, I think, to the tune of about $2,000. So we've actually put that in there. We've identified a budget line to accommodate that. So it really will be a council decision. But what we need to do in that report is identify what the working group thinks. So if we sort of work towards supporting or coming up with a motion or a comment after this working group meeting, I need to include that into the report, ready for the reports to go out tomorrow. So that's part of the discussion that we need to have tonight. And as Tim has stated, there are a couple of options there. And you know, as the first council in SA to declare a climate emergency, it's something we just need to consider, you know, where do we want to be in relation to this? And, it's probably not a place for the administration to sit on the alliance, but perhaps an elected member.
Nathan, you've got your hand up.
Sorry, Nathan.
Yeah, I guess my first reaction is ask Ian Tolley. You know, he's an elected member. He's got a lot of experience in the space. He would probably come back and report to us. Obviously, we'd have to do it in such a way to see if he would be interested. I'm not putting his hand up for him, but that would sort of be my first sort of thing. And obviously, and one of us, or I don't know, how many spaces have we got? What's the parameter?
Yeah, Nathan, I think wasn't it initiated by Ian in the first place to council anyways, Tim?
Oh, okay. So I must have missed that one. Yep.
Ian brought it to our attention. Ian's already on a working group, has been on the working group CEA right from the start.
Oh, okay.
As I guess Ian Tooley, but he's recognised as being from the town of Gawler anyway. So he would continue in that role. Whether he would consider being a member of the strategic advisory group, that would be a slightly different role.
And also, I suspect that it's probably not the working group's decision to make in terms of who goes. It's whether or not we think we should have representation there, or how we engage with this broader process. Paul?
Look, I'm broadly in support of being a funding founder, but I think if we have a representative, I think that person should be a member of this group. And I would suggest Cody would be a good representative. He's an elected member. He's on this group. He's the chair of the CCS. He's done a wonderful job there. He represents the mayor on a broad range of functions. So I think it would be good, and it'd be a good learning experience, a good experience, and that's what we need with younger councillors to get that experience, especially on a national forum. So, I'd be saying that we need somebody, from this group to represent the group, to feedback to the group.
Thanks, Paul. Jack, you had your hand up, and Tim, I've seen you.
Yeah, so one, I'm supportive of the idea of Cody becoming a part of that group if we were to sort of be involved. Would it still reckon it'd be good to pick like Councillor Tooley's brains over it? If I'm reading the documents right, this is sort of coming from the National Climate Emergency Summit, right? So yeah, he was there at the conception of it all, so like he's sort of has those networks and he understands the whole premise of the thing. So I still reckon it'd be good to sort of, whoever we decide as a group or the council or whoever decides to sort of put their hand up, if we were to go down that path, it'd be good to just pick his brains over that and sort of get an idea of like what the goal of that organisation is and sort of tie in Gawler's goals. And
yeah, for sure, Jack. Yeah, Tim? Sorry, Jack.
I was just going to add, look, I think it's probably, with the report going up, I mean, it's the working group endorses, that we are a founding funder. We want to, be a council that's on board with this, part of the strategic advisory group. I think it'll be probably council's decision then to nominate, who they think would be a representative on that. Sorry, Nathan.
I was just going to say, can we put a sentence in there that the Climate Emergency Working Group endorse a member of the working group, or just something on those lines, picking up on what Paul's saying? Obviously that's if someone like Cody or Jack or someone obviously wants to sit in, but can we put a sentence in there that we're favourable for putting someone else on from our circle, or I don't know.
How about we just go through the process and initially, if I'm hearing the speakers so far, all assuming that we'll support becoming part of the council and moving on to the next step of supporting it financially. So we support that action. Could people please vote either yes or no in terms of both becoming part of the council and becoming a funding founder?
I'm probably for both, personally.
Yeah, I'm in together. Yeah, because the higher level of funding seems to have already received support, so I'm assuming that everybody there has.
Do I vote as an officer?
I don't think we can, Tim. But
that's what I said.
Okay, all right. Well,
that's unanimous. So that's a unanimous vote
okay,
for.
All right. Okay, so we've already decided that bit. The next bit is about who to nominate, and I suspect that that's not in our remit.
Can I come in here and say, do we really want to nominate somebody? I say this because, one, there's two councils from the state that can provide strategic advisory group members, no more than two. We've already got two councils that have nominated people to go on to the group.
Yeah.
So as being a member of the strategic advisory group, it's different from just letting young people on and joining in and having a go. These ones are going to be providing strategic advice at a national level on a national movement. And I think
I suppose
no,
just one sec. Sorry, Paul. What I'd really like, the point I would like to make, which is different to, but probably supportive of what you're saying, Tim, is that every bit of engagement or organisation that we become part of takes time and energy and staff time to make use of it. And at this point in time, in my opinion, I think it would be better if we really focus on our own work and try and achieve what we need to achieve locally in terms of the delivery of the plan. I'm very conscious of the fact that you can engage really widely, and I like doing that, but I'm also conscious that it really takes away in terms of our effort. And I would just, my personal opinion would be that it might be better to like let some of the well-resourced councils around Adelaide take the lead on this for a little while, and then if we kind of square some of this other stuff away, we can move on with it. Nathan, I see your hand up.
All I was going to say was just look, if Councillor Tooley's already sort of plugged into that space, maybe we can talk about getting a little bit of an update in a quarter's time or something like that from him of what that body looks like. And I know it's not the core working group, but you know what I mean? We might be able to pick his brain a little bit on that.
Also, I would think that through the council connections, when we've had that meet up with all the councils who have declared a climate emergency, that Campbelltown and Charles Sturt are both on that group. And so that would also be a forum through which the councils can talk to each other on these issues.
Exactly.
I just wanted to finish clarifying the difference between the strategic advisory group and working group. So Ian's on a working group, which is different, and there's nothing to prevent individual councils and individual people, if they've got the skills and knowledge or the enthusiasm, to join part of a working group that they might set up as from climate emergency councils. That you don't have to be a founding funder for that. It's just that what they're calling for right now is nominations for the strategic advisory group. So just want you to be clear that one's at one very high level and the other ones are still possibilities at any time. And Ian at the moment is on a working group.
Yes, Paul.
Just on the strategic advisory group, is there a limit on the number of participants?
Yes, there's 2 from South Australia, I understand.
Yes, so if Charles Sturt and Camberwell have already nominated, there isn't a position at all on the strategic
federal election.
at the moment.
It would make it contested.
Yeah. My personal view is they're more resourced, and let them. And so I think the mayor
From Charles Sturt.
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty high level stuff. And then Camberwell, yeah, I reckon go with that. Just support that. About the positions. Thanks for explaining that, Tim. Yep.
Yeah, I agree. I think we can ride on their coattails on this issue. We've done a lot of leading on other elements, and we can just kind of does anybody have any dissenting views?
No, I mean,
yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay. Tim and Jack, have you got the Paul? Sorry, were you waving your hand again?
No, I was just saying it's all clear now.
All right, sorry. Tim and Jack, do you have the
down.
information that you need to be able to take back to council then?
Well, what I'll do is I'll include a paragraph that the working group's in support of council being a founding funder and also being a CEA council. So we're not looking at nominating at this stage, but supporting and as a founder with a recommendation for an amount, and also being a climate CEA, being a CEA council. So we're on the alliance itself as well.
I think it would be good to perhaps suggest that the budget line is a different budget line and it doesn't come out of this.
No, I got quizzed on that today by the CEO, and I said, surely we can find something somewhere. And he goes, have you got, I said, yes. And so it's coming out of my budget line. So it's being identified. So
As in Jack's budget line, or as in
no, not Jack's budget line, but
the
you know,
CEAP?
Litter.
yeah, no. We've got our
Your
departmental, yeah.
Okay,
So-
all right.
No, they're working.
Miscellaneous.
Oh, we're always defending our budgets and with sharp elbows.
No, all our budgets for the working groups accounted for. So
Okay, great.
that's-
All right, awesome. Anything else on this before we move on?
I was just gonna comment. Are we able just to leave the comments like what you said there, Jack, but just leave it open-ended for any nominees or anything like that, and then listen to the chamber on the night?
Absolutely, we're more than happy to. Just you know, I know I wrote down what you said was the working group endorses a member of the working group, but I might just sort of put a paragraph in there that says, you know, council may decide to endorse or recommend a member or someone to be a part of the strategic advisory group. Is that?
Oh, to be honest with you, I'm almost thinking of just endorsing the spend and endorsing the membership, and then just blank, and then see where the rest of the chamber goes with it.
Okay.
Because it seems like to me that Campbellwell and Charles Stewart will probably take those two strategic spots. So it's really just looking at whether we want someone on, that we nominate someone from a council to be on the strategic advisory group. That's different again. And I mean, if that was the case, I would be nominating someone from this committee, really, because then you've got this committee. So
Yeah, but we don't have to worry about that.
no,
Yeah.
no.
That's what I'm
I
thinking.
wouldn't
Okay.
bother.
Anything
Okay.
if it does come up on the night, then Paul, you can put that up.
Yep.
Yep.
Sure.
Well, the last thing we have to do is decide whether we want to support the nominations of
Charles Stewart and Campbelltown.
I've got no problem with that. Does
Fine with
anybody
that.
else have any? Please speak up if you don't support that. Oh, look, we're voting. Oh, very cool. All right, better vote too then.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah, I'm sort of, to be honest, I'm in two minds, because if I vote yes, then I'm in support. But if there is someone else in the chamber that might want that position, I would be in support of a local over them, if that makes sense. So at this point in time,
That's fine, Nathan. That's your decision to make as a councillor on the night.
so I'm probably against supporting them at this time.
Yeah, yeah, whatever you need. Yeah.
So perhaps if the remaining working group members would want to just show their hand as to whether they're in favour or not. And I can just simply say that, you know, or do we need to? Do we actually need to mention that? We can just simply say, well, you know.
Otherwise, I'll call a division chair.
Okay.
I'll stand up.
Please don't.
No.
I didn't
Okay,
say
so
that.
look, and Tim and I will just work on a paragraph after. So you know, the working group, you know, it's sort of not a unanimous support, but leaves open for further debate or discussion around options in relation to nominating someone for that position.
Well, can we just say that we left it to the council, that it's a council decision, and you know they can decide who they want to nominate, and you know.
No, but I think I thought we voted on supporting those two because it was, one was a mayor and the other reason was because they had more resources, and third that we should be concentrating on our climate emergency action plan.
So Jack, what was different between what you were saying and what we just voted on then?
I thought that's what we just voted on.
Yeah.
We've voted on the two points, which is to be a funding founder and a Climate Emergency Alliance Council. We're then supporting Charles Stewart and Campbelltown's nominations.
Full stop.
But what Councillor Shanks is suggesting is, can we have an opening there to, you know, to allow council to debate? And surely, as the council can discuss that on the night if they choose. It's just how do we word that in the report?
I personally don't think we need to word it because we actually voted on that motion, and you know there was a democratic, you know, it was voted. wasn't unanimous, but it was
Yeah.
voted, so it's
Okay.
carried. And
Um,
that's just an issue for council now.
and then that's something that Nathan potentially you could speak to,
Yeah.
and you said, well, I voted against
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
blah blah,
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's all.
Okay.
Yeah,
Tim?
yeah.
That's right.
Or we can just leave it as simple as the Climate Emergency Action Plan Working Group does not have a view or is not supporting participation on the Strategic Advisory Group, as we feel that we've got to concentrate on our own work locally first.
Yeah,
And then it still leaves that open for council to any councillor that wants to put up and a different idea, they can still do that.
Is it possible to actually just say the two things and point out where things were differing? So we can say, well, actually, there was discussion, there was some, significant support for supporting the current nominations from those two councils, but there's also the potential benefit of whatever you want to put in there, Nathan.
I think it'd be better to say nothing because I think they'll take that as very ambiguous.
You say nothing because it.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
I
We don't know if we're gonna give money first, and we're
Yeah.
talking about nominations. Let's just do one thing at a time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I
stop
don't
talking
think
about
we're
stuff.
providing
Yeah.
a motion for the council. I think we're basically moving a motion saying, here's the advice of the committee, and then the
That's
council
all
will
it is.
move
It's
a
just-
motion.
Yeah, we've already voted on it, so yeah, we don't. I
we're
don't
just trying to provide advice on the other dot point. That's all we're trying to do. We're not trying to direct anything. So we're just trying to see, do we have a consensus position on the third dot point? And if we don't, then perhaps we just leave it as it is.
Look,
I
we
mean,
have got a consensus position because we voted on it.
Yeah, I guess Paul's point is that the majority was
Yeah.
voting for and
Yeah.
support of. So
Yeah.
and I guess the point that I was trying to make was, if another councillor that's not in this group does want to be a nominee, I want them still to feel supported from this group. It doesn't-
So
Well, no.
what I suggest then is in the recommendations, which will be at the top of the report, is just simply put in what we are supporting, and then there is the option to debate the recommendation within council
No, we haven't.
if we need to, or no.
No, we haven't. We didn't
No.
vote that way. We didn't
Okay.
vote that way. You can't change
Yeah,
history.
no, that's fine. I can
You can't
continue.
change history. We voted those three things.
Has to come naturally. Person has to be willing to participate. This we can't vote anybody in,
No,
and it doesn't really matter if Cody wants to be in or not. It has to be come from the heart out and willing to participate in strategic, as Tim suggested. This is a high-end stuff. We barely scraped to be part of this emergency group at first point, and now we're talking about sort of how we're gonna do the rest of it. I think we buried that out, and then but still open opportunities. If anybody within the group would like to be part of it, we will support that person. If
Yeah,
it's kind of a,
I'm leaning back towards saying nothing because if we support the two other nominees, by default, we're not supporting. We're not suggesting that we should have our own nominee.
but we just voted for it.
Well, he's agreeing with,
I'm agreeing with that.
Yeah, but
it's agreeing with it.
that we're supporting these two nominees.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying.
That's okay, right. Yeah, you think you'd say nothing, but we actually.
And
Yeah.
then the debate can take its course in council.
That's
with
exactly
whatever-
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
we've had our
Okay.
debate. We voted. That's it. Council
Yeah.
can have their debate and vote. Yeah,
Okay, great.
Okay.
that's it.
Is that enough for Jack and Tim to take forward? Good. Okay, good. Let's move on. Tim, is it the Renewables Feasibility Project?
Yeah, it is. I think we discussed that one right at the start.
Already.
As well. We touched on that, and we said that we've taken the initial work that we discussed with the working group, and Jack and I are progressing that through council at the moment.
Great. And then 5.5.1.
Yeah, that's it. So we will be
Oh,
approaching.
sorry. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it was. Yeah. I need my eyes tested. And then the ACV, I imagine that we've pretty much covered off on that too.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we did a whole lot of the work right at the beginning when we shouldn't have.
Yeah, okay. All right.
I actually sent a little email with some dot points that I see that Jack responded to sort of more like Paul, how we were talking about the dot points. So yeah, just have a bit of a check and see what you guys think.
Thank you.
Cool. Great. Okay. Does that mean we've come to the end and we're actually didn't do too bad?
Can I just ask where I find these attachments? I just can't find them.
Well, initially it's in an email. There'd be a link with an email that came from Tim.
Yeah, no, I'm at the Google Doc spot.
Are you in the? So you've clicked on your Google Drive?
Yeah,
I think what Paul's
I've
having.
got my agenda.
I think what Paul's having difficulty with is getting the view right. So maybe if you called in one day or something, we could have a look. If you've got a laptop or something, we can just work on getting the view right.
And maybe you could share a screen or something like that, or
I'll share your screen of how it should look.
Yeah, if you send me a screen and I'll sort it out from there. Okay.
Yeah.
So can we just go back to the support of the nominee? I'm just messing around.
Living dangerous.
With a rescission motion, you got to wait 5 days before you do that.
Without notice.
Okay. Can I just can we close the meeting when I'm only 5 minutes late? That would be great.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for another useful, constructive progress. You know, we're really progressing. I know sometimes it feels a little bit slow at times, but there's a lot of paddling of duck feet under the surface going on here. So yeah, we're all going well, and it's
thanks everyone.
Yeah.
There is an LED light at the end of the tunnel, I think we could say.
Well done, Jack.
50%.
That's awesome. Yeah, okay, so thank you, everybody. And I'm just wondering, are we likely to have a meeting face-to-face the next one?
Councillor Fish.
Yeah, this will be our last Zoom meeting, I think.
Good. I actually quite like Zoom meetings, so I don't have to get dressed up.
Yeah. Well, I just noticed that the next ordinary meeting in the last item on the agenda is saying that it's going to be online, but that might not be the case. We might all get to meet face to face. So
the issue is we can't use the room downstairs for the meeting. We have, if we want to have a face to face, it's got to be the council chamber, which can accommodate the spacing and the space requirements. So the room downstairs is not big enough. So it's something to think about, and perhaps Tim and I and Catherine can talk about it and see if we can do something and go from there.
I'm easy either way, but yeah, I'll go with whatever. But I'm like Paul, you're already at home. I'll close the laptop after this, and I'm good.
Oh no, I'm going to go to my tea.
Okay.
That's fantastic.
Okay, thanks everyone.
All right, lovely. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you, Megan, for
Thank you.
30 minutes again.
Yes. Thanks,
Thank
Megan.
you so much, Megan. We
Cheers,
love you.
Megan.
See ya.